The book is called Uphill, a memoir by Jemele Hill, who I have known for quite some time, way back when you were a scribe for ESPN2 or something like that online. And now look at you.
It was Page 2.
Page 2. That's right.
ESPN.com.
ESPN.com, Page 2. At any rate, Uphill, a terrific memoir written by you, Jemele Hill. Thank you for being on this program.
Always a pleasure, though, as I've been texting you since yesterday. This was a setup. you put this in the universe. How can
I know what you mean.
I
saw, hold on a minute. I saw that you're on a tour for your book. Mm-hmm. I am always up for being supportive for whatever you want to promote or whatever's going on. Mm-hmm. I reached out to you knowing that you had, based on your schedule, a 2-day window to be in Los Angeles, California, if I'm not mistaken. And you said Monday works best. And I said, okay. And it's funny, right around third quarter of Saturday night's game between our alma maters, Michigan and Michigan State, you say something along the lines, it's sort of like some hazard light went on in your world that you were appearing on this program after all this.
Yeah.
Accusing me of being a setup artist.
Saying that the timing really works out very well for you.
Well, it could have worked out well for you.
I guess. You're right. It could have happened in the opposite. Then it would have been you who would have been questioning, why did I invite her on this show? But then there's a beat down. Well, two. Technically, how you want to see this. And there's the game, then the fight.
Well, it's a beat down and then a beat up.
Right, you're right. A beat up. And so I was just like, wow, it's one thing if we, catch one by Michigan, which I think most Michigan State fans have to say they totally expected.
Yes.
Then the other additional extracurricular activity occurs, obviously a post-game fight in the locker room or the locker room area in the tunnel. And now I'm just like, wow. Not one of my better timed
to come on this program.
Yeah, I have to say that.
But don't worry, I'm not going to do anything untoward on the subject matter.
No, I'm not saying that you would.
No. And again, I'd rather talk about Uphill, which is a story about the third quarter and fourth quarter of Saturday's game. Is that what it's called?
Wow. Right, exactly.
Wow. That's odd that you were ripped straight from the headlines.
I deserve
it. Well, since I mean, there is a photograph of you that I have in my phone. It's saved forever. You in a Michigan State shirt and jersey smoking a cigar outside that you would post all the time after Michigan State beat Michigan.
The last 2 years I've been able to post that.
And then before that, quite a bit as well.
Quite a bit, yeah. So,
I know.
Listen, sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the nail. Today I'm the nail. It's okay.
Yeah, and I know that. And just, give me your 2 cents on what the rivalry means so people can kind of understand it, since that is out there right now and being discussed nationally right now.
So
what do you think?
I know a lot of people are looking at this, and if this is their first impression of Michigan State or this is a relatively new impression, as you know, Rich, and I don't think I'm overstating it, I do think between the two schools, the rivalry does mean more to us, right? I think the rivalry means something to Michigan, but obviously because of Ohio State's presence, there's some there's a debate there about it for you all, and which is ironic because all that does is irritate Michigan State fans more. We want to be the one you hate the most. True. Not Ohio State, right? We're 60-something miles apart.
But in real life stuff, though, where a lot of these players who faced each other on Saturday know each other from grade school.
They're from the Detroit area. They have played against each other.
Yeah.
It's like, of course, I don't condone what happened, and the players were suspended. The university acted swiftly as they should.
Indeed.
An investigation will take place. But this is sort of not surprising. There's always this underlying bubble of hatred between the two schools.
Yes.
And especially, as you know, when we beat you all, and especially the consistency in which we beat you in the last 10 to 12 years, then we are insufferable. That's just what it is. Like, we are much more insufferable in this. And because of that, especially after last year, the last 2 years in which Mel Tucker has won, that I knew coming into this game that if we don't win, if Michigan gets the opportunity, they are going to bury us. Prove a point, which you did with the physical nature of, the running game.
And throwing deep with 3 minutes to go.
Listen, if I'm you, I would do the same thing.
By the way,
would do this.
Jemele texted me like, I would put 50 on you guys.
I would try to. I'm clowning. Totally clowning. So I didn't take that personally at all. But again, you have to remember a lot of these players, they have played football against each other in high school, close proximity. We know what proximity breeds, the nature of the rivalry.
Right.
That tunnel was the right recipe for something to go down, especially because the other element we don't know is I want to know why the two Michigan players were isolated and there.
I definitely want to know what happened. And,
Yeah.
Harbaugh just said today he thinks criminal charges are coming, which is serious business.
It is serious business. I hate that it gets to that.
course.
There's a part of me that thinks, does it really have to get to that? I understand it was serious. I get that. I don't want to belie the seriousness of it. But you could easily see something happening like that between Michigan and Ohio State. There have been near almost fights a lot of times in these type of games. It's just you didn't see it the way that we all saw it on Saturday night. So not a good look for the university. I do think some of y'all, as in Michigan fans, are putting a little too much on it. A little too much hot sauce. A little too much spiciness.
On what?
Well, it's just...
On the post-game stuff you're talking about?
No, I mean as in some of the language used to describe what happened, as if, again, this isn't a heated rivalry. And any university tends to do this with their rivals. They try to clutch the pearls a little tighter and ask like, oh, we could never. And I was like, and I say this liking him, having defended him. I was like, y'all did have a coach slap somebody. I mean, this year. All right. So it's like.
Oh, you're talking about the hockey coach you're
no,
talking about?
I'm talking about your basketball coach.
Oh, Jawan. I see.
Yeah, that did happen. So I'm just saying that sometimes in heated moments, things go down. So let's not get all holier than thou on me right now. Like, y'all done had some moments too. We both universities have. Mm-hmm. It is what it is.
Okay.
All right.
Jemele Hill here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let us talk about your book and why now. It seems like you still have a lot of your story to go in your career. Jemele.
All right. You're on the Rich Eisen Show. You got to tell the truth.
Yes, thank you.
The money is initially what got me into it. I mean, I'm just keeping it real. I got to keep it a buck. I got to keep it a full buck. So, I wish,
I guess uphill, or you're looking at the Benjamins.
So this is what happened.
The stack.
I always wanted to be an author, but I want to be, let me not say that in the past tense, a fiction author.
Yes.
And I never imagined wanting to write about myself and my story. Not that I didn't think I was compelling or interesting, but it was just never something that I ever really had a true desire to do. So in 2019, my literary agent at CAA told me that there's a tremendous amount of interest in the publishing world in your story. And I'm like, really? Okay. I know I've been in the headlines and I know for why. So I sort of get it from a curiosity standpoint. Mm-hmm. And the book went to auction. I mean, it just is like I wrote a book proposal and went to auction. I was very surprised that it did go to auction, even though he told me it was. And then he told me, hey, if you really want to make your path in the publishing world, this is a good way to start. And once I sort of accepted that I have to write about myself, then me, just my journalistic kind of mentality is that I'm leaving every play on the field. And I know, like you said, I have a lot of life to live, but the life I have lived is, I think, pretty compelling. And it goes really far beyond ESPN. ESPN is the least part of these chapters that I write about. And so then it became a mission to own the narrative and also write about my life growing up in Detroit and my story in the most transparent, honest, vulnerable, raw way that I could.
Okay, so what do you want folks to know about the uphill portion of this?
So
Jemele?
the uphill portion, I've told a lot of people who've read it, starts up kind of heavy, very heavy. Gets lighter as you go through, but both of my parents are recovering addicts, and so I grew up witnessing a lot of things I shouldn't. There's a very dark history of sexual abuse in my family, and so these are things I write about very honestly. Some other things, happened to me personally. I write about having an abortion. I write about the fact that, somebody tried to rape me when I was a preteen, like all these other things. So it's very heavy, tough subjects, but I think it's important to deal with these topics. And I also think for families who, most of us come from very complicated dynamics. We don't always talk about them, but there's a layer of shame that are sometimes around these topics. And I thought it was very important for me to do what I could to take the shame off of it. Why
did you turn to sports? I mean, where did that turn come from? I mean, we just heard your background and your upbringing. Was it I guess, a safe world in your mind? Do you think?
It was. I mean, people ask me, when did you fall in love with sports? I'm like, I don't know, because I've never not loved sports. I've always been drawn to it. And the origination is being a tomboy. Like, I loved playing sports growing up in the neighborhood. I played fast pitch softball in high school and in middle school, and, you know, was on traveling teams and that kind of thing. So I was pretty knee deep into just the competitive aspect of sports, and that naturally bled over into a love of all different sports. The first team I ever loved was the Detroit Tigers. They won when I was 8 years old.
In the 80s?
84. I can still name that whole starting lineup. You know, like, I love that team so much. And then, of course, you know, growing up in the city is, you know, Pistons, Red Wings. Never liked the Lions. Was not my, you know.
Well, I mean, Barry Sanders arrived and
in the late 80s, early 90s.
Early 90s.
Yep.
But you're talking, because I was in, just to date myself, in college from 86 to 90 in Michigan in Ann Arbor. And that was, Tigers were killing it. The Red Wings were killing it. The Pistons were
on the verge of
doing the
right
bad
there.
boy. I mean, I hated Mahorn and Lambier.
You hated them?
Hated them.
What?
I'm a Knicks fan.
Well, yeah, that makes sense.
So
That's true.
I remember when the Knicks went in with Bernard King in Joe Louis Arena. Okay, like, I was there as a Knicks fan in New York, and then I go to Michigan, and man, I hated how are you surprised I would hate the bad boys?
Yeah, you're right. I mean,
Unless
I thought that
you're
being
from-
at Michigan might have
Definitely.
influenced you a little bit.
Absolutely not.
Like, no, it was happening.
No, because they got really good.
Yeah.
And they were, man.
Then you were really suffering.
It was
tough.
you know, but that was the ascension of the Detroit sports world, for sure.
Yeah,
You know,
and so all of those things put
Right.
me into sports. And as you know this, Rich, is that growing up, if you really wanted to follow your favorite sports teams, you read the newspaper. And so I started reading the Free Press and the news, and I realized that, oh, people actually write about sports for a living. This is fascinating. And I was already a voracious reader. I loved to write. I was terrible at math. I had all the recipe for being a journalist, okay? And then in high school, I joined my high school newspaper staff. And at the time, the way it worked for Detroit public high schools is the Free Press put a special insert inside the paper once a month that had all the high school newspapers in them. So you had to go to the Free Press to put together the paper. So the first time I walked into a newsroom, I was hooked. I was very fortunate that I figured out my life's work in 10th grade. Never done anything since that was different. I've been a paid journalist since I was 16 years old, because I worked at the Free Press in high school, and then went to Michigan State for the state news and for the journalism program. Nasty little secret, I was a Michigan fan when I went to Michigan State.
Well, I know you got the smarts in you, Jemele. So
No, it's just that it was the Fab Five, and it was, you know, it was a whole.
you couldn't even resist that.
I know, because Chris Webber's mother taught at my high school. I went to Mumford.
Did you see C. Webb went back for the first time this past week?
I heard that, which is great, because I do think I was really glad when him and Jalen, when that fence mended, because
I think it's still in the process, don't you
it
think?
is, but it's better than it was.
No question.
Right? I think there's progress been made. Maybe I won't go as far as to say the fence has been totally mended.
Right.
But I've told them both this individually.
Yeah.
Like, you guys are very important to the history and legacy of the city of Detroit. I love you both. I know you have things you need to talk about and work out, but it does us no good, you know, to quote Jay-Z, you know, it's no good when the family feuds. Like, not for the city of Detroit. You guys are too important for that. So they know how I feel about that.
Wow, what do they say to you when you say that?
I've gotten positive responses from both. I think it's just a matter of just overcoming, you know, certain baggage and certain things. And I always feel like when you're in that situation, it doesn't do you any good to relitigate the past. You have to start from where the point you are forward. Like, what do we have in common now? Like, we can't go back and change anything that was said, to go back and say, well, you said this or you said that. That's not going to work. You have a more important mission than that. And the mission is this city loves you both. We would love to see you united. You guys are both, you have done amazing things for the city. So imagine what that, you know, could do together. And I hope to one day, much like we saw Magic and Isaiah have that conversation on NBA TV, I hope we see that conversation soon.
That would be amazing.
I think it would be.
And it, you know, it's they mean so much. Obviously, you can speak specifically about what they mean to the city of Detroit. I'm just talking about pop culture, just what they mean to the sport of basketball, and just seeing what they have inspired and who they have inspired.
Yeah.
And how at the time they were viewed as thugs and what they were wearing. And now TJ has brought it up every single time when Jalen and C-Web and Juwan Howard have been on the show about how the short size are now creeping back up.
Yeah, I don't
and
like that, Jemele.
And it's just like,
It's like John Stockton won the battle.
Right?
It's like he won it.
Fat Five didn't get called all those names just to have 5
You know what I'm saying?
chosen again.
Now all the players wearing hoochie daddy shorts. It's like, what are we doing? I thought we had agreed that was not the case.
That's what they said here.
Also,
Jemele,
Rich, Jemele mentioned Mumford. That's where Jerry Bruckheimer, when we talked about
Do you know how many times I've had to tell people Mumford's a real high school?
Yeah.
And when Axel Foley wore the T-shirt, people assumed it was fictional. I was like, no, Jerry Bruckheimer went to my high school.
Yeah.
That's why he got the Mumford mention in there.
Maybe you should be in the remake of Beverly Hills Cop.
Jerry, hit me up.
right?
I'm there.
We can make dreams come true around here. So Uphill, a memoir, again, where all books are sold. I mean, how are you comfortable now being somebody who talks about the world and life and society? And you're, my Northwestern professor always called the sports world the toy department. You're kind of out of the toy department now. Jemele, are you comfortable in that role?
It's interesting because when I talk to younger sports journalists and try to get them to understand how it was characterized, when we were kind of cutting our teeth in this business, it's true. I don't know if it can be called that anymore because we see the collision. It's always been there, but I think the collision is more talked about and written about now between sports, politics, race, gender, all of these things, culture. And I'm comfortable, always will be comfortable in that lane. I think because of the incidents I've been known for, that people put me in another lane. Some people have called me an activist. I'm like, I'm not an activist. I know activists who are on the front lines, who are marching, protesting, gathering, city officials, making proposals. I am not that. I am happy to amplify their work. I'm happy to do what I can to be just a servant and being a citizen in this country because there are very important issues that are on the table. Everybody, please go vote. And so because of that, I don't mind being in those lanes, but I think sports is still a great lens to see these very important issues. Because think about it, Rich, as a society, we still remain very segregated. We don't worship together. Most of us have our communities and friends. Typically, among racial and social economic backgrounds are about the same. Mm-hmm. The one thing that we do together is sports. We sports together. And that's why I think sports has a special opportunity to get people to open up their minds, to engage in different issues. And I know there's going to be a loud and active crowd that say, I watch sports, I don't watch it for that. You mean to tell me you weren't inspired by Muhammad Ali or John Carlos and Tommy Smith or even Colin Kaepernick or LeBron or Serena, who have often used their platform to speak to other issues? Of course you were. Mm-hmm. And the reason you listened is because you enjoyed and loved their talent. So because of that, I will always write and talk about sports because of its unique ability to unify. Well,
and you're so spot on when you talk about how sports and society is mixing and how main, I guess, topics of conversation about politics and the world and how we deal with each other, it happens all the time. And I'm not comfortable talking about it here. I do when I speak from the gut and speak from the heart. I mean, I did that in hour number 1 with what Kyrie Irving put on his Twitter account, and and how he said that he's not promoting a book that talks about tropes of anti-Semitism, and I felt I was offended. I'm frightened, actually. I'm frightened because I saw beamed on the side of the stadium in the world's largest cocktail party in Jacksonville. Yep. Kanye is right about the Jews, and then somebody ran and put that on a building in Jacksonville, and the normalization of that sort of stuff that I hope isn't happening becomes normalized when somebody who we're rooting for because he's so terrific at basketball and gives him a platform of 4.5 million says, I'm not promoting it.
Yes, you are.
Right.
And listen, and kudos to Nick Friedel, who I know for challenging him on what he was saying. In full disclosure, I actually, Kyrie and I have done some social justice stuff together. I like him. I think he means well, but when he first posted the Alex Jones video, I sent him a direct message then. And I was like, listen, when you take somebody like that who has caused so much pain to a number of families who lost their kids in one of the most horrific acts of gun violence we've ever seen in this country, I don't care what point that he's making. I don't care if me and Alex Jones agree that the sky is blue. I will never say out of my mouth, I agree with something that Alex Jones says. And he had a very polite response back. I didn't want to go back and forth in that manner. I'm hoping at some point I'd love to have a face-to-face conversation with him, because I do think that he is better than what he's shown. I don't blame you for feeling that, and I've tried to explain this to people, is the one thing you don't want to do is have talking points that are similar to some of the worst people in history. The reason why this language is bad when you try to paint Jewish people this way is because that's the exact reason Hitler used to justify exterminating millions of Jews, that they're collectively deceptive and that they're working together and there's a conspiracy going there and that they're trying to keep us down. Like, that's how that all started. And so anything that promotes that is very dangerous. And it's the same thing with Kanye West. Not only that, but what he said about George Floyd's, the reason George Floyd died, which was proven in court not to be true. When you have these kind of platforms, there is a responsibility that comes with them. Anything that you put on there is seen as a promotion. A retweet is an endorsement. Posting it for millions of people to see is an endorsement. And so we have to collectively be able to not just stand together, but also, I think, make people in these positions aware of the damage you can do very, very easily.
And that we also see through the responsibility avoidance, that we see through the flimsy excuses. I mean, again, that Kanye says that because Adidas rightfully canceled their relationship, he now feels like he knows what having a boot on his neck is. Or Favre saying that, I didn't know this was all going on when I'm texting people.
Same.
I hope it's not coming. It's going to come. Could this come out? Like, could the media find it?
And even with Aaron Rodgers and some of the misinformation that he gladly shared, it's like, when you are in that position, the responsibility is different. That same position can bring you millions, bring you adulation. That same position you have to treat very carefully. I've even had to learn this myself, okay, that matters, and you have to be vigilant about and intentional about the messages you're sending.
Jemele Hill, Uphill, a memoir. Go get it where all books are sold. Jemele Hill is Unbothered. New episodes drop on Mondays on Spotify.
Yes, and it's out right now since,
what do you
talking about Dwayne Wade. Dwayne Wade is my guest this week on Jemele Hill is Unbothered. Available only on Spotify.
And oddly enough, Gabrielle Union is on the back of your book saying how you should buy it.
Yes. Follow their advice.
Okay, fantastic. Soledad O'Brien as well, Tamron Hall, and so much more. Thanks for coming in at Jemele Hill. And I barely even brought up the final score.
Next time, why don't you have me, I don't know, on like the day after Independence Day or something. Something where neither of our teams are playing.
Okay, March Madness or something like that.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Never know. Well, I mean, we'll see that kid number 0, Keon Johnson, is that his name?
Yeah.
He plays for Izzo too. Man.
Yeah.
Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman, pardon me.
Yeah.
He is good.
It reminded me.
I'm glad you didn't keep throwing to him.
Reminded me of how Braylon Edwards did Michigan State.
In that triple overtime years ago.
Oh my God, it was like embarrassing.
My wife did the sideline reporting for that, and I thought I would never see her again because they rushed the field.
Look at that.
I'm like, but thankfully she did, and everything's great. At Jemele Hill on Twitter and Instagram. Go get Uphill where all books are sold. We're back with more in a moment. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.